Hey guys, Shannon here with Got to Go Prepared. Stay tuned. We're going to talk a little bit about how to make your own traditional or primitive bow. Stay tuned. Hey guys, Shannon here with Got to Go Prepared, and as we said in the intro, we're going to talk a little bit about how to take this, which was a quarter of a tree that I just ran a splinter in my hand with. Nice. When you work with wood, that's what happens. As you can see, this is a quarter of a tree. This is hickory. I've had it for a little while. How to turn this into a bow. Now I'm not going to go through every step and I'll bore you to death and you'll go to sleep, I promise you. In the last video I talked about some books you could get, the Boyer's Bibles, that can walk you through this step by step. I just wanted to show you a few of the tools and kind of some steps on how to get started, and some videos coming up later on down the road. We'll go through the whole process. I may even take some time in the woods and show you how to look for something and find something if you don't know what a hickory tree looks like. This time of year the leaves are coming off. It's a little bit harder to find them. Sometimes you can find them by the bark. It's easier to find a hickory tree by the leaves, or if you can find one that's got hickory nuts, you could do that, but usually those are too big. You want a smaller tree. This is another part of the same tree, so you can see about how big around. That's the half size, so it was about that big around. I quartered it out, and these are two of the quarters. Of course, this one had a bad spot on it, and I cut it off, and this one has a knot, which I'm trying to work around it. First of all, if you're going to make what they call a flat bow, you wouldn't have a per se handle. I like the self bow that has more of a handle in it, so I can cut a knock in it to knock my arrow, an arrow rest, if you will. So this is the one I'm going to work on next. Now this is the bark area of the tree. This was the bark. Easier to peel off when it's green. I waited till it was cured before I did it, which makes it a little harder. But this part of the bow, which is the outside where the bark was, is the part that would be facing your target. So that would be what's facing your target. Once you peel the bark off, you don't really have to do anything to this. It is fine the way it is. What you're going to do, you can see the gray color where this has been seasoned. This is the inside of the tree, the quarter. This is what you're going to work. And the tools you're going to work that with, as I said in my previous video, I have done it with nothing but my hawk. This is a replica of a hawk from late 1700s. Guy made it for me to assemble the little beaver, and his name escapes me, but it's a pipe hawk made from a gun barrel and forged into a pipe with curly maple, and yes, it is smokable if you want to, but high carbon steel blade. I can beat the heck out of this in the woods and it stays good, but you can use this to cut your tree, take your bark off, trim your edges, and you can use this for fine tasks by holding it this way and working the wood this way. The other tool that you would need, hopefully you have with you, is your knife. I've built a bow with just those two items and a shoestring for or paracord for a bowstring. But you take your knife like this and you just draw the wood like a draw knife. Now I have a draw knife here. This is a draw knife. Very old tool, good for woodworking. I love this thing. I found it at a, once I read the books and was told to get a draw knife, I went to a bunch of antique junk stores until I found a couple of them. I have two of them. This one with the light curve in it is my favorite. I have another one that's more straight. It's really good for taking big chunks and heavy stuff, but this is what I usually use for working the bow limbs down. And I will work them, just to give you an example, I'll work them from the handle gradually down to the end of the limb, and I'll work it in the grain. And I'll show you in a minute what I mean by in the grain. The other tool would be good to have, and you might not want to, you know, you can have your hatchet knife on you. Hopefully if you're in the woods you always have that. A draw knife, if you're doing bushcraft or woodcraft type things, a draw knife doesn't weigh much. Be a great thing to throw in your bag with some other tools like this. This rasp is a little bit heavy, but if I've got some heavy wood and if I'm working a piece of Osage iron or this really cured hickory, this heavy rasp is good for taking off lots of wood, and then it's got the fine side so I can take off small amounts, because when you get the limbs of the bow down to where you're wanting them, you want to take it off very gradually, because one swipe of a draw knife or the heavy rasp can take off several pounds of draw weight off your bow, and you don't want that. But in the beginning you can use that. So those are some tools you can have on you. When I'm working this at home, I have a large vise that I can rotate and spin, and I'll put that, lock that bow down, and I'll draw the wood off from that. If you're in the woods, and how I did it a long time ago when I did one in the field, what I would do is, if you have some string, maybe some bank line, your paracord or something like that, this is just a piece of string. How you can do that is you can take this loop right here, find your area you're going to work on this, and tie you a slip knot around the center somewhere. And I'm not going to do this exactly because it take a second, and on video that could take forever and bore you to tears. But in essence, you'd have a slip knot here, and on the end you would have a small loop. And what you would do is you would just find you a place to sit down, and you would have this sitting like this. What you do with that far end loop is you stick your shoe, or if you got your shoes off, you can stick your toe in that, and that holds, and then the slip knot up here will grab this and give you a way to hold. I don't know if you can see this in the camera, but you can hold that with your foot, pull it that way, and then you have this to draw, and you don't have to pull the full weight into your body. On this ledge here, and you can find a tree in the woods or a rock and do the same thing. You can take and draw it this way, or you can take this, prop it up against something, or wedge it in a knock in a tree. You know, be creative. You just want to get to where you can have that limb there, the limb of the bow, and draw it and work the limb. As you draw, as you get your piece of wood, and this is called a stave once you get it this way. This is your bow stave, and you want to have a handle on this bow. You want to leave the handle on. You can work that and shape that later, but you want to find the center. So you can do this if you don't have a tape measure. Find some consistent thing like this and mark off how many it is. Find your center, mark your center out. So once I find my center, then I know I have a upper and a lower limb, and then you want to decide which is going to be your upper limb, which one's your lower limb. I won't go into detail on that. The book will tell you how to decipher how you want to do that. I tend to would make them very even, put this directly center, and then I will work it. Now I'm going to draw this on here since this is grayed out and you can't see it. When you're working the grain, so if this is my center where my hand is, and I hope you can see this, there's going to be grain in this wood that's going to, just run. I don't know if you can see that line. When you start to draw this down with the draw knife, you'll see the grain you'll see the grain. You want a continuous grain line. So when you cut through it, if you've cut through a piece of grain, there'll be a break in your grain line, and you don't want that. It'll make your limb weak. What you want to do is to see that continuous line all the way down to your handle, all the way across your limb, because you're going to work this down, and it's going to be smooth and flat. It won't have this triangle looking shape, and this will be gone. But you want to work that down until you get a good thickness, and then as you go, and in another video I'll show you where to, as a stopping point to find where that is. But leave a good thickness as you get down, because the thinner you get the limb, the weaker it's going to be. But you want to work that grain really easy on that. I hope that makes sense. I'm going to try to demonstrate that. Probably cut the camera and get a couple swipes off this limb so I can come back and show you without boring you with me setting this up. So we're going to come back in just a second, and I'm going to have some layers of this off and show you what I mean by the grain. Alright guys, I went down a little bit on this and I want to see if it'll show up in the video. If it'll focus in. I'm not sure if it's going to. This may be a hard thing to show with the older grain like this. But anyway, there's a grain line right here, and it stops and then picks up another grain because I'm cutting through the grain right there. When you have it, you look at the grain of any wood, you can go get a 2x4 and look at it and split it, and you'll see the grain line. You'll see the grain lines. What you want is a grain. You want to work between each grain line. When you get your bow done, you will be in one continuous grain all the way down to your handle on each limb. So you want no lines broken in that grain. That way you know you're in the one grain line from the handle all the way down. You'll see one continuous piece of grain into the handle, and that's how you know you're in the right spot. If you've got any spot where that grain breaks, your limb's going to be weak. And you want to work each limb consistently. So once you get down to where they're pretty much similar in size, you want to work it very even as you go. So what you want to do is take a few swipes on this limb, a few swipes on this limb, and you want them to be same. You should be able to see that grain come down, and you should be able to see where that grain line is in your handle even though your handle is going to be fatter and there's going to be extra grain sticking out for you, the thickness of it, but you should be able to see that grain line and it pick up on the other side, so you have one continuous piece of grain, so you know you're in that grain line. That makes your bow strong, and you want to watch that as you go all down. As you get further down the process of that, you should take your time working that grain. It's not going to be something you do unless you got all day. That may be something you work on a weekend and get it down kind of even, and then maybe you pick it back up the next day or what have you. Take your time, especially with your first bow. First one I ever made, I made too many. I got too deep, and I think the bow was about 10 pounds. I mean, I guess I could shoot a squirrel with it if I'm lucky, but take your time, and as you get down, then you'll work on tapering this in and putting your string nocks, shaping your handle. But you want to work your limbs even strokes to keep that same grain line and keep it nice and even so your bow is strong. There is a tool also, you can make one in the woods. I have one and I seem to have misplaced it, of course, but it's I call it a tiller and stick, and what it is, it's basically I think it's a 2x6 that I cut with a bunch of notches in it going up, and then on the top of the board I cut a little groove in it, and that's for my handle. So I put a temporary string, not the actual string, on my bow once I think I got it in a good spot and it's good and even, and I sit it in there like this, and then I'll take that string and I'll pull it tight and I'll hook it in one of those grooves, and that'll make the limbs of my bow bend. And then I will step back and I will sit there and look at those limbs and make sure they're even, and that's called tillering your bow. So as you come down, I want to look at each limb and make sure they're flexing the same. If this one's flexing less and this one more, I want to leave this one alone. I want to take it off the tiller and stick, put it back on my workbench or in my lap, or sawhorse, workhorse, whatever you have, shave horse, and work that limb very gradually. I may only want to take a stroke off, check the tiller. If it still needs more, take another stroke off, make sure I'm staying in my grain, check it again, and make sure it's even. Usually if you're in that same grain, you're okay, but remember you got a handle, so if you need to take a little bit more, as long as you're staying in the same grain on that limb, to bring those limbs to where they're bending, they're not like this, they're perfect. You got a perfect bend in both sides, so you want to get them even, and you'll keep pulling that down till you get that level that you want. And most bows like this, you know, I've got like a 32-inch draw on a compound bow. I don't take a 32-inch draw on something like this. I keep it no more than about 28-inch draw to pull it. So that's kind of the range you want. You can get some stronger wood, and you might be able to get a 30-inch draw on it, maybe with an Osage orange or really strong wood. But the hickory is a great starter wood to make a bow out of. A lot of the natives used hickory. I mean, hickory is strong. You've all heard the saying, "Oh, hickory." it's, you know, Old Hickory. Andrew Jackson, one of the presidents from here in Tennessee, they called him Old Hickory because he was so tough. But hickory's a good one to start with, and you work it good. You can work this wood green. You don't have to season it like I did. You can go cut this, cut it green, and start working it down. And once you kind of get it where you kind of want to be, don't overstretch the limbs, then let it sit and season for a time, and you should be able to string it up and be able to shoot with it. Just take your time on it and work the wood and enjoy the process. We'll come back, we'll talk a little bit more about how to take that down a little bit more. And again, I recommend getting the traditional Bowyer's Bible and read through that, find the type of bow you want to make, and follow those guidelines and play with it and enjoy the process. Stay tuned, we'll do a part 3 when I get some more time and work the bow down a little bit further and show you some more steps on how to do that. But that should get you a good start and get you started on making your own bow. And for now, remember guys, you got to go prepared, because you just never know.